president is expected to sign an executive order that's going to focus on police reform. So Paula Reid's joining us now to dig a little bit deeper into it. What do we know about this executive order? What's it going to include?
Well, senior administration officials tell me they want to hold police across the country to a higher standard of policing. And so this order will adopt a few modest components that have already broad-based support. Now, among these components, first of all, they're going to encourage police departments to collect and track excessive force complaints. They're also going to try to put forward national standards for training officers. They really want to incentivize certifications. And lastly, they're going to encourage police to bring mental health professionals or social workers along with police officers as they respond to nonviolent incidents. But the administration will not say how they're going to enforce this. They're not going to tie it to any federal funding. So right now, it's unclear how they're going to get police to actually follow these recommendations, or if they are, as they appear to be, just suggestions.
Paula, how is the news of the order being received by police organizations, for example?
Well, the National Fraternal Order of Police said they've seen the executive order. They're supportive of it. Other law enforcement officers and agencies have come out and said they, too, are supportive of it. They had a seat at the table as this is being crafted. Their feedback was taken into account by the White House, so it's not surprising that they're on board. But this is not likely to sit well with protesters, because in no way does this executive order directly address racial bias in policing. It appears that in terms of any additional policy, the White House is passing that off to Congress. And as of right now, the Senate is not expected to take up any reform bill before the 4th of July holiday. And it's interesting because Senator Tim Scott, who's been leading the Republican efforts on reform, he says it's a mistake to wait any longer. And if they don't come up with a new law, because the executive order is not legally binding, and the senator says if they don't come up with a new law, they really will have failed this moment in American history.
Yeah, I'm curious to really see what the president, what the plans are and what the details are. But before we do that, I want to ask you about something else. John Bolton is set to release a book next week. It is published by Simon & Schuster, which everyone may or may not know is a division of Viacom CBS, just so you know. The president, not too happy about it. Here's what he had to say about the book yesterday.
He knows he's got classified information. Any conversation with me is classified. Then it becomes even worse if he lies about the conversation, which I understand he might have in some cases. So we'll see what happens. They're in court, or they'll soon be in court, but he understands he did not complete a process or anywhere near complete a process.
All right. So John Bolton was definitely in the rooms when many things happened. He sort of got out of the White House before the impeachment really sort of started to dig in. He knows a lot of stuff. Could he possibly face criminal charges?
Well, I've been speaking with his lawyer throughout this process since it came to light that he was actually writing a book. And remember, this book's original publication date was several weeks, months back, and it was delayed so that they could go through this review process with the White House to try to identify any classified information. And then yesterday, the president and even the attorney general suggested somehow that process isn't done yet. But this book is in the warehouse. The publisher has already sent it. As you noted, it's coming out next week. The ambassador, he already sat for an interview with another network that's scheduled to air later this week. It's unclear that they're going to be able to block this getting out. Now, there are some outstanding questions about whether any classified information may have been mishandled. So far, there hasn't been any evidence of that, any direct accusation. The attorney general kind of skirted around it yesterday, just talking about the duty that administration officials have if they encounter any sensitive information. So it's certainly possible if there was evidence that classified information was mishandled, but these allegations that he didn't go through the process directly contradict what's coming from Bolton's lawyer. And Bolton's attorney suggests that this is just a pretext to prevent him from speaking out through his book.
Yeah, and, you know, it should be pointed out, Paula, as you probably know, that there are already several journalists who have copies of the book. Bolton is expected to be interviewed this week, I believe, by ABC News. Presumably, the correspondent has the book, so it's out there. In other words, whatever the White House would potentially do to try and hold it up, the cat's already out of the bag.
Yes, it is, and it's going to be hard to put any of those back in the legal standard to prevent folks from reporting on what they've read or put that interview back in the can. That's unlikely to happen, though. It does appear that the president and even the attorney general are raising the specter, raising the threat of possibly pursuing some sort of criminal charges or criminal pursuit. But again, at this point, based on my conversations with his lawyer, based on correspondence I've seen between the White House and Ambassador Bolton's attorneys, they have been involved in this process for quite some time, and prior to it being announced that this book was going to be published, there's no indication that he had not completed the process.
Right.
Okay.
Let me ask you, Paula, too, about the Trump campaign's plans to hold this rally in Tulsa on Saturday. We're learning more about some of the steps that they plan to take to address the potential spread of coronavirus, which is interesting in of itself because you know, the president has not been one to wear a mask. There are a lot of things that we have been told to do by the president's task force that members of the administration themselves are not doing. Now it seems that they're putting into some measures because they realize that the coronavirus is still out there.
Well, consistently throughout the coronavirus pandemic, it has been do as we say, not as we do. There have been mixed messages constantly coming out of the administration. What happens in the Oval Office in the West Wing is often a complete contradiction of what the task force is doing to tell Americans to protect themselves. So it's interesting to see as the president goes back out on the campaign trail how he's handling this. His event on Saturday will be in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And let's look at a second what's going on in Tulsa. They just reported their highest daily increase of cases of the virus, and that was linked to large indoor gatherings. And our Finn Gomez, a White House producer, he has learned that, in fact, this isn't just going to be one event. It's going to be one event spread over two venues. So you effectively have two different crowds of people that you need to protect. Health officials in the city have said they just don't know how they're going to protect attendees or even the president. So under some of this pressure, yesterday the Trump campaign came out and they announced some of the measures that they will be taking. They say that when you arrive at the rally, you'll have your temperature taken. You will have access to hand sanitizer, and they will hand you a mask. But the mask will be optional. It will not be required to wear this mask, even though the current CDC guidance for situations where it's hard to socially distance, like a large rally that's indoors, recommends that people do wear these masks. And so far, there is no indication that there's going to be any social distancing. I've been to many of these rallies. I don't know if you've had the opportunity or some of your viewers have seen them on TV. They're extremely crowded, and you stand for hours in these large crowds outside to get in. Once you're inside, you're shoulder to shoulder. And a lot of the folks, for whatever reason, they tend to be a little bit older. Often this takes a whole day. Some of the folks are working, but the crowds tend to skew older. And often, well before COVID, we would see a lot of health issues. We would see people passing out. We would see people in medical distress. Even the president, during his speeches, usually once or twice, he'll have to point to somebody in the crowd to get medical attention. So it's clear, though, that the campaign recognizes this is an increased threat because anyone who requests a ticket to this rally has to sign a waiver promising not to sue the campaign if they get COVID.
And Paula, you know, before I let you go, I know we got to wrap this up, but you just raised an interesting point that I'm curious about. Have you heard at all from the White House or from folks at Walter Reed that they're worried about the president? I mean, being just the way you described it, I just thought to myself, that hot, steamy air of people breathing all over the place indoors, and the president of the United States, who I guess is not going to wear a mask. Is anybody worried about the president's health?
I haven't asked specifically anyone here at the White House. It's clear that the president believes that because the people around him are tested regularly, that he does not need to wear a mask all the time, or the people around him don't need to wear masks. It's just been inconsistent. They started wearing them, then they stopped. Now, it's specific to these rallies. It's obviously impossible to test everyone the president's going to come in contact with. But during these rallies, often he is at an elevation. He is likely going to be at least 6 feet away from most attendees, depending on how they configured this. But it's still not clear what the configuration is going to look like. The original venue couldn't handle, they said, all the RSVPs they got, which is why they've divided it into two different events. The president is expected, according to our Finn Gomez, to attend both events. So it really is just unclear, Vlad. How are they going to protect the president, keep him from coming into contact with anyone who may have this virus?
Wow. Okay. Paula Reid for us at the White House. Paula, thank you.